Hello and welcome to the Week 4 Football Outsiders Coach Ranking Show. I'm Ian O'Connor, Senior Data Analyst at Football Outsiders. Joining me, as he is every week, is Vince Verhei, Football Outsiders Assistant Editor. Today we're going to be talking about the big game from last week, the Bills against the Dolphins, some of those more surprising games like the Colts over the Chiefs, Jaguars over the Chargers. We're going to look at some of the biggest or the best and worst decisions from the past week and look at some games that we're looking forward to this week from a coaching perspective as well as on the field. Before we dive into that, just want to remind you all about that special deal we have going on at Underdog Fantasy. Play on Underdog Fantasy with us. You can double your first deposit up to $100 using promo code OUTSIDERS. So even with NFL best ball season over, Underdog does have other user-friendly game formats that spice up all the NFL action. Try their Battle Royale, which is a 6-round best ball style draft with simpler chances to win than with traditional daily fantasy sports sites. You can also try their Pick'em games where you can wager on players' chances to go higher or lower than their projected stat lines. Mike Tanier and I did that on our Monday recap show for the Monday Night Football game. Went 5 for 5 and won 10 times our money. You can do the same with some of our picks and some of your own picks. And you can do that even in states where traditional prop betting currently is not available. Underdog is the fastest growing fantasy site around, so join the fun over at UnderdogFantasy.com or download Underdog in the App Store and use that promo code OUTSIDERS now to double your first deposit up to $100. That's a free $100 using promo code OUTSIDERS. Vince, now that we've got the ad read out of the way, why don't we jump into the big story from Week 3, and that was the Bills against the Dolphins. Now, the Dolphins slowed down the Bills. Josh Allen and the Bills, it seemed kind of on the surface. They lost, obviously. Didn't put up as many points as usual. Josh Allen had 400 yards passing, but it was on 63 attempts. That's a career high for him. 9 more than last year's game against Tampa and 12 more than that Week 1 Pittsburgh game. He had 6.98 adjusted yards per attempt versus 10.45 and 8.61 in the last 2 weeks. And those Bills drives went touchdown, fumble, touchdown, punt. Not a bad start, end of half. They made a field goal, missed a field goal, turnover on downs, and then the end of the game. So it seems like a lot of success there. But what did you see from that game that the Dolphins beat the Bills, basically hand them their first loss?
Well, Caleb Clinton did a great write-up of this game in his Any Given Sunday column up at footballoutsiders.com. Went up on Tuesday afternoon. So the Dolphins in 2021 were one of the most aggressive defense, I think the most aggressive defense in the league last year in terms of blitzes. And through about 2.5 games, they were right on track, even with the new coaching staff. And they were just sent in the house as often as anyone would. And it worked here in the first half. They gave up, 5 drives, 2 touchdowns, forced a punt, and let the Bills get in the field position at the end there before the spike was bobbled. But the big reason it worked is that second drive when they got a strip sack deep in Buffalo territory, set up a Dolphins touchdown and helped keep the game close. So as you'd expect with lots of blitzes, kind of boom and bust with the big turnover, but also the 2 touchdown drives and another that crossed midfield. Then after halftime, they totally switched things up and they went ultra conservative. They dropped everybody back. They let Allen check down over and over again and hoped the Bills would make mistakes in critical situations. And it turns out they did. There's those four second half drives. We had the field goal when they couldn't convert in scoring range, a missed field goal when they really couldn't convert in scoring range. Failed 4th and 2. They were down by 4 at the end there, so they really had no choice but to go for it and couldn't get it done. And that led, of course, to the butt punt, which I'm sure we've all discussed many times by now. And they had one last chance to get back in this, and again they couldn't get the ball spiked in technically field goal range. Now it would have been, got it written down here, a 58-yard field goal at the end of the game if they could have spiked it, and a 42-yard field goal at the end of the half if they could have spiked it. So neither of those is a gimme by any means, but that's 2 field goal tries they didn't get because they had trouble just simply spiking the ball at the end of the game.
And Tyler Bass is one of the better kickers in the league, got a great leg. Could have completely changed this game, obviously 6 points when you lose by, I think it was 4. It ended up being 21-19 because they got the safety, right? So it ended up, but still, that's a huge difference, obviously. Now, that shift for the Dolphins defensively, do you think that was just based on, what they saw? He said they got the strip sack. That's kind of who they are. It's a big blitzing team, but Buffalo had success for the most part. Do you think that was something they said, hey, let's back off a little bit and make them work a little bit harder here?
I think so. And I looked at Buffalo's DVOA by half. Their offensive DVOA was 8.9% in the first half, which is, anything over 0 is good. So even with that strip sack, it was good. Now, their DVOA actually went up in the second half to 13.4%, but that's with 0 turnovers as opposed to that bad fumble. Their success rate in the second half dipped from 59% to 53%, which is not a huge change, but it shows you that Allen and the Bills were struggling more often and not moving the ball as consistently as they did in the first half. So it's a super close game, and I think it's fair to say the breaks went Miami's way in this one for the most part. But when games are that close, that kind of margin can make a difference. So, yeah, I think it's more they saw what they were doing was having mixed results, and they were hoping that the soft zones would play better, and in the end, it worked out for them.
Yeah, ended up winning the game. And I talked about last week, as I've mentioned a couple times, coming from the Edge Sports background, looking at fourth down decisions, win probability, that McDermott has been very good on fourth downs the last few years. He remained aggressive in this one, 3 fourth down goes. All of them were 4th and 2s. One was at the Miami 2 in the first half that they scored a touchdown on. That was about a 2.5% increase in win probability there. One at the Miami 30, which was ended up being a first down. And then that one at the end of the game you mentioned, 4th and goal at the 2, ended up being a turnover on downs, but forced the Dolphins into a bad situation and resulted in a safety. So they knew really field goals weren't going to win this game. It turns out, like we said, a couple field goals in a couple situations could have won them the game, but it ended up only being 5 total touchdowns in this game. But those decisions by Sean McDermott directly led to 2 touchdowns in the first half, the first 4th and goal at the 2, and then at the 30-yard line where they bypassed a field goal to get a first down. The Dolphins really weren't faced with any of those tough decisions. They had one that was a 4th and short in their own territory. They didn't go for it. Obviously, you don't see that a whole lot, especially early in the game, unless you're Brandon Staley. And then that was really about it. We didn't have anything else that they agreed with. I don't think they had any times that they went for it on 4th down, unless I missed one. But they really weren't in a situation like Buffalo at the end of the game where they had to. So overall, though, McDermott did what he needed to do to keep them in the game, staying aggressive against a team like Miami, who we saw last week can put up a ton of points. But Miami came out ahead in this one for all the reasons that you said. And then another game I talked about at the top that we talked, the Colts beating the Chiefs. The improbable happened in Indy. Not many gave them a chance. I know Tom and I both on our Thursday fantasy and betting show picked the Chiefs, especially given the way the Colts have played. I think we all picked the Chiefs, right?
I had the Chiefs as my best bet for the week in the Football Outsider staff picks, which again proves why I personally don't like gambling, because I lose a lot. But I think
I picked the Chiefs as well, and it's as much as that I do, it still just shows you, like as they say, there is no sure thing in sports betting. But, go ahead.
Oh no, there's not. And when you look at upsets like this, usually there's either a big defensive score or a lot of special teams mistakes. And this time we saw Kansas City with a lot of special teams mistakes. They had a muff punt that set up a 4-yard Indianapolis touchdown drive. They got a backup kicker who missed an extra point and a field goal. And the weirdest one is when they had a 4th and 11 in Indianapolis territory. It would have been a 41-yard field goal, would have given them a 7-point lead. Instead, on 4th and 11, they tried a fake field goal with Tommy Townsend throwing a pass to a covered receiver. I think it was incomplete and a penalty anyway. It wouldn't have picked up a first down if he had completed it. Just a really, really, really bizarre decision there for a bunch of reasons. If the biggest one is, 2 things. First of all, 4th and 11 is not 4th and 1. That's a long conversion to try. And I know your kicker's obviously having issues and you don't have faith in him. But if you want to try 4th and 11, you have Patrick Mahomes. Patrick Mahomes is really, really good at throwing footballs. Tommy Townsend,
not even looking.
Yeah, I don't have Tommy Townsend's numbers in front of me, but I think he's worse. So that confused that decision baffled me. And in a game as close as this one, I mean, I can't guarantee you if Mahomes could have converted, because again, 4th and 11 is really far. But this is a strange decision that certainly was not the best option under the circumstances.
Yeah, and that's something we've seen that's been really surprising to me this year is with Andy Reid. He's made a lot of these kind of mistakes that you normally see him go for. He had passed up a chance to go for it on 4th and goal at the Indy 2, sent out the field goal unit, ended up with a delay of game that made it a 4th and 7. They still kicked the field goal. But sending out the field goal unit there in the first place, through 3 weeks, he's pretty far down. I think only Nathaniel Hackett is worse when it comes to net win probability gained on 4th down so far. And This past week, he had those couple errors and he was last this week. So it's really surprising. I give him I don't know if I'd say the benefit of the doubt, but I would expect him to turn it around. Like I think I mentioned last week or the week before when we were talking about them against the Chargers. A lot of times early in games or early in the season, we've seen him kind of go err on the side of caution and go a little bit more conservative. But when it really matters at the end of games and when they need to ice games and put it away, and even in other situations, we see Andy Reid make the right call. He's finished top 5 in our coach rankings the last few years. So give him, I expect him to improve there and get better like he always does. But it's been a little bit of a head scratcher here in the first few weeks to see some of those decisions that he's made, especially in this one, especially that one you just mentioned, the 4th and 11.
Yeah, and there were some other things here. The Colts got the ball back with about 8 minutes and change left on the clock, down by 1 score, and proceeded to run a 16-play, 76-yard drive. They used up almost all the time. Only left Kansas City 24 seconds at the end. And the longest play on the drive only gained 14 yards. They were just getting 6, 4, 8 yards at a time. It was a dumb penalty on Chris Jones that let Indianapolis convert a 4th and 14. Personal foul call in a very, very bad situation. But the biggest issue is, as they just kept marching down the field and bleeding clock, at some point, if you're Kansas City, you got to force this issue. You got to start getting aggressive. You got to dial up some blitzes and get aggressive. And the worst case scenario is they score, but now you have time left to answer. Right. Instead, they just let them chew up clock, and they saw that worst case scenario, which is they scored anyway, and they still didn't have time to answer. And the other defensive strategy that Indianapolis had here, and I don't think this is like a magic spell on this, just doing this will work week in and week out. Patrick Mahomes does a lot of things well. So there's not one thing you can just take away and say, okay, we'll beat him now, because usually he'll make the other stuff work with it too. But one thing the Chiefs love to do, they love to throw the those in-breaking routes to Travis Kelce, the big tight end, their best receiver. They also love to take their speedy wide receivers, get them across the field, and get them, those drag routes, running across underneath the coverage, and then pick up some easy yak. And the Colts took both of those things away. Patrick Mahomes going down the middle, only 2 of 9 for 11 yards in the entire game. There was an interception there, although to be fair, it was a desperate situation at the end, so that's not a huge deal. But taking that away for the Colts for 1 week worked. And with that and all the mistakes the Chiefs made in the kicking game was enough to get a very surprising win.
Yeah. And moving on to another team that got a surprising win this weekend, I think for a lot of people, is the Jacksonville Jaguars. And Doug Pederson has really turned them around so far. We talked about it in the ALMANAC. We've talked about it on a lot of shows that we've done this year so far. Everyone in the NFL really has talked about it. And that's Jacksonville just looks exponentially better this year without Urban Meyer. There's really no shocker there. So, Vince, what have the Jaguars done so far that's really propelled them? They're second best in DVOA through 3 weeks. I think 5th on offense, 4th in defense, or top 6 in both. And they've looked just extremely competent, I guess, compared to last year.
You're right. Extremely competent is a good way to put it, because they weren't that last year. They were extremely incompetent. Just showing up looking like they're ready to play a football game is a massive upgrade from where they were last year. I had kind of a deep dive here, just what the difference has been from going from Urban Meyer to Doug Pederson beyond just they're winning more, scoring more points. So the biggest differences, honestly, are the stuff we don't see on Sundays. It's Monday to Saturday, getting this team ready. Because, again, they did not look like a professional football team last year. They look like a barnstorming 1920s team that showed up not knowing each other until game day and just trying to make stuff happen. From a schematic standpoint, the biggest difference is what they've done with the wide receivers, because Urban Meyer came in and put together a roster that didn't really have any wide receivers. He got a bunch of kick returners and just counted on throwing them the ball and breaking 500 tackles a game. Their top receivers last year, you had aging Marvin Jones masquerading as wide receiver 1. And then you look down the rest of the roster, Laviska Shenault, Laquan Treadwell, Jamal Agnew, Tavon Austin in 2021, for God's sake. And that's not even counting Travis Etienne, who was technically a running back, but when they drafted him, the plan was to make him a kind of hybrid, runner receiver type. And of course, he got injured, which is not Urban Meyer's fault. That's just bad fortune. But the point is, they wanted to get another Yak player when that's already all they had on the entire roster. And you look at these guys. I mentioned Marvin Jones' aging. Laviska Shenault is just a kick returner. He's in Carolina now. He's only had 2 targets all year. Now, fair play to him. He turned those 2 targets into 90 yards and a touchdown. But it's not like he's a major part of the offense there, and it's not like Carolina's loaded with a bunch of other options either. Laquan Treadwell's out of the league now. Tavon Austin's out of the league now. Jamal Agnew is a tremendous kickoff returner, great special teamer. But he was mostly a defensive back in Detroit. 4 years in Detroit, they threw in the ball 24 times. Urban Meyer says, let's throw him 39 passes in 10 games. What could possibly go wrong? And the answer is, like most things in the Urban Meyer tenure, everything went wrong. So this team building strategy of just getting a whole roster of kick returners, throwing them short routes and sitting them back and waiting for them to make defenders look silly, that works when you're at Ohio State and Florida, when you have a built-in huge recruiting edge over your opposition. In the NFL, it's a joke. It looked like a joke. It was a joke, only except for the part where it's not funny. So that's what's going on in the Jacksonville offense. Now, I should note, just for all being pedantic about all this, Trevor Lawrence's average depth of target is actually down this year. He's actually throwing more short passes than he did a year ago. But again, they've been playing with a lead. They haven't been behind in the second half, throwing Hail Marys all the time. He's got Christian Kirk, a bona fide NFL wide receiver. He's got Zay Jones and Marvin Jones as the next 2 guys. That's not great. This is not the greatest show on turf ranks or anything, but they're both better than the guys that Lawrence was throwing to last year. So that is the biggest change from an X's and O's standpoint from Urban Meyer to Doug Pederson, and the biggest change in the offense that the Jaguars have had. Now, I got to be fair. As much as it pains me to do this, I must be fair to Urban Meyer. There's a lot more talent elsewhere on this Jacksonville team. They added Brandon Scherf on the offensive line, drafted Luke Fortner. That's 2 starters on the offensive line. And as much as everyone's talking about Trevor Lawrence, because it's fun to talk about Trevor Lawrence, the strength of this team right now is the defense. In particular, by DVOA, the best run defense in the league right now. And there's a lot of reasons for that. Derek Klassen wrote a film room piece that went up on Wednesday afternoon at footballoutsiders.com, looking at first-round rookie Devin Lloyd, free agent signee, I'm going to butcher this, Foye Oluokun, I think.
That's right.
But those two new linebackers, they're the team's top tacklers. Trayvon Walker's the top overall draft pick. He's not shown up on the box score yet. I don't think he has any sacks and is not making a ton of tackles. But when you watch the film, you see the impact he's having, setting the edge, and even dropping back in coverage sometimes. So there's been a major talent upgrade over this team. And Jacksonville's offseason, which already looked like a winner coming into the year, has come up roses. It's been better than anyone could have possibly hoped for.
Yeah, sitting at 2-1, and like you mentioned, we've talked about last couple weeks, could easily be 3-0, maybe should be 3-0, but the best DVOA for a Jaguars team through 3 games ever. So they're fun to watch, one of those great stories. And, like Aaron said earlier in the offseason, that wouldn't be a surprise to see the Jaguars come out and win 8-9 games. We didn't really expect it, but just by looking at all the things that you said, just the improved talent, the coaching staff that actually knows what they're doing. And you said, as much as you hate to give some credit, to be fair to Urban Meyer, I'm going to do the same, because he actually was pretty aggressive last year in our coach rankings too. He was in the top 10, maybe even top 5, if I remember correctly, for a while. That's about all that he did well, it seemed like, was going for it in the right situations for the most part. But Doug Pederson has really taken that over, and we know that that's who he is. We've seen that. We saw that in Philly a ton. And he had a few more, like each of the first couple of games, he's had leads and has kept his foot on the pedal as far as being aggressive on those 4th downs. And this week, he had 3 of them. I mean, one, this was early in the second half, didn't really have a huge lead yet, only up 6, but turned a 4th and 1 into a 50-yard rushing touchdown for James Robinson. Earlier in the game, had a 4th and 5 at the Chargers 39, passed up a long field goal, or even a short punt, not wanting to go for it, not really wanting to kick a really long field goal. And then late in the 3rd quarter, had a 4th and 1 at the Chargers 6, already up 13. You can take a field goal to make it 16. I know that's a 2-score game, but like we've said a handful of times over the last couple of years, 16 points it's a 2-score game, but it's really not because it's so hard to get 2 touchdowns and 2 extra or 2-point conversions without the other team scoring. But still, just making the right decisions, not only having them prepared, but putting them in the best position to win, to maximize their chances of winning by going for it on 4th downs. And he's been really great at that so far, kind of picked up where he left off over there in Philadelphia a couple years ago. So really great to see there. Now we're going to move to a city that things are not going well for, and that's Las Vegas. Does anything stand out to you from the Raiders? Like, what's going on out there? What's contributed to their 0-3 start? Is there any fixes that they can make, or is this kind of what they're going to be this year? Obviously not going to go 0-17, but.
So one of the things I like to think I'm good at as an analyst is telling you when I am wrong. And I'm wrong about things all the time. I thought the New York Giants were going to get the 1st-round draft pick, and they've already won 2 games. I thought the Russell Wilson Broncos were going to be good on offense and bad on defense. I got that backwards. But sometimes I'm right. I'm not afraid to tell you when I am right. And we did our staff picks. My pick for a team to overachieve and beat its DVOA projection was the Jacksonville Jaguars. And my pick to underachieve and fall short of its DVOA projection was the Las Vegas Raiders. So I'm 2 for 2 on that front at least. So my questions for this team were mostly on defense. Yannick Ngakoue was still very effective last year. They signed Chandler Jones and then traded Ngakoue away. I forget the exact timeline of how that all went down. But they were counting on Chandler Jones to be a big impact defender. He's been a disaster. He has 0 sacks. He's only made 6 tackles in 3 games. The Raiders are next to last in adjusted sack rate. Although I should point out the team that is dead last is Chandler's old team, the Arizona Cardinals. So they're still missing him somehow.
Yep, they're hurting.
The Raiders only have 2 sacks in 3 games. They're both by Max Crosby. So here's the thing about the Raiders and the way the defense is built. Patrick Graham's the first-year coordinator in Las Vegas. He came from the Giants. He doesn't want to blitz. He wants to rush 4 and drop 7 and count on that front 4 getting pressure and avoid giving up big plays. Pro Football Reference lists the Raiders having 31 blitzes in 3 games, and that's not even counting like times the defense blitzed. That's times a specific defender blitzed. So if 2 guys blitz on one play, that counts as 2 instead of 1. For comparison's sake, the Dolphins also played 3 games. They have 61 blitzes, nearly double. So this is a very, very conservative scheme. And when you have a zone defense that's not getting pass rush and quarterbacks having all day to sit back and work the underneath, what happens is the cornerbacks, superficially, their cover stats look pretty good because they're dropping deep and the stuff is opening up underneath them. It's the linebackers and safeties that are suffering. Linebackers, Jayon Brown, Divine Diablo, safeties, Jonathan Abrams, Ron Morig, all 4 of them have already given up over 100 yards receiving in coverage as targeted receivers. The Raiders are 23rd in pass defense DVOA, and part of that is the lack of pass rush. That when you don't get sacks, your DVOA is going to suffer. In coverage, they're 29th in DVOA against what we call other wide receivers, which is anyone other than the top 2. So the slot guys, the 4th guys, they're feasting on this Raiders defense. 29th in DVOA against running backs in the passing game. So again, linebackers are being targeted. They're left alone in the hook zones with too much space to cover and not enough or too much time to cover it. Running backs against the Raiders, 64.3 receiving yards per game. That's second most in the league. And this is what happens, like, again, when you're playing a zone scheme and your pass rush is no good. So what can they do? They can try blitzing more because they're, again, dead last or near the bottom in blitz rate. They can try it. And here's the problem. If you do that, that's going to expose your cornerbacks. Now, I mentioned the cornerbacks' individual coverage stats for Las Vegas are pretty good because the teams are just throwing elsewhere. You don't need to throw to the cornerbacks. But if you start blitzing guys, that's going to expose Nate Hobbs, who was next to last in success rate when he was targeted last year among qualifying cornerbacks. It's going to expose Rock Ya-Sin, who has the coolest name in the NFL, but he was the 3rd corner in Indianapolis for years and really couldn't even maintain a starting job there. Now he's being counted on to be a top defender in Las Vegas. Anthony Averett came over from Baltimore, was supposed to be a starter. He broke his thumb in week 1. He's been out. They said at the time he'd be out at least a month, so we're still looking at probably at least another week or 2 until he gets back. And blitzing more is just going to expose those guys to the stud receivers and quarterbacks they're going to face in the AFC West here. The The Cortland Suttons are going to have a big game. The Mike Williams is going to have a big game. Whichever Kansas City wide receiver is Patrick Mahomes' binky that week is going to have a big game. So they're kind of stuck. This is the team they've built. This is the team they are. And like you say, they're not going to go 0-17. At this point, I very much doubt they'll make the playoffs. They probably won't have a winning record. And short term, I don't see any easy solutions.
So basically, they're damned if they do, they're damned if they don't, because someone's getting exposed on that defense, and unless Devontae Adams and Derek Carr can put up 60 points a game, they're going to struggle.
Yeah, which is exactly what I thought would happen. I thought I thought Devontae Adams would be a fantasy wide receiver 1 maybe. I thought Derek Carr would be a good pick. I thought Darren Waller would be a good fantasy guy. I think I don't think he's doing that well actually, but instead, well, it's not really instead. I thought they'd have to score 30 points per game to win, and it's looking like that may be true.
Yeah, and just not looking good. And you mentioned a lot of different stats there, passes against other wide receivers, things like that. For those of you that are watching, you can get access to those same stats with an FO Plus subscription at footballoutsiders.com/subscribe. That also gives you access to all of our data that drops on Mondays. Instead of if you don't have an FO Plus subscription, you got to wait until Tuesday to get all of that, all of the premium stats. We also have access with that to our NFL picks against the spread and straight up, and those are ranked by confidence. You get some great articles and stats, some fantasy rankings. Get a lot of good stuff there, as well as an ad-free experience. So again, that's at FO Plus at footballoutsiders.com/subscribe. So we'll move on now to one of the segments we do every week, and that's the worst decisions of the week by coaches. In the past, this has been fourth down decisions. It doesn't always have to be, especially with you on the show now with us, Vince. You have a good eye for a lot of different things, but mine is going to be a fourth down decision this week, and it's a surprising one that I saw, and it's from Dan Campbell, who we've raved about the last couple of years in his fourth down decision making. But late against Minnesota, he kind of slipped up a little bit. They're up 24-21, only a minute 14 left. Face 4th and 4 at the Minnesota 36. So a medium-ish fourth down. Chooses to kick the field goal to make it 6 points, but that's still a one-score game. That's something that Mike Tanner and I talked about on Monday. You're taking a one-score game and making it a one-score game. Now, they missed the field goal, gave Minnesota 8 extra yards, and it was surprising because he was 4 for 6 on fourth downs to this point. He did fail on the previous drive on a 4th and 1, which may have had something to do with it. But teams act a lot differently when they're down 6 versus when they're down 3, don't they?
Yeah, the kick to turn a one-score game into a one-score game, rather than allowing the team to settle for a field goal that will tie you, you're now forcing them to try to score a touchdown that will beat you. There's a suicidal element to this. It's something you don't want to do unless unless absolutely necessary. And it wasn't 4th and 14; it was 4th and 4. And it's weird. I watched this game a lot, and I've been a fan of Dan Campbell, and specifically these Lions. I thought these Lions, and they still might, as it turns out, make the playoffs. There's no one really running away anywhere in the NFL. But they got a 2-score lead in the second half, and this is a team that's been running well all year. And you mentioned they went for on 6 fourth down conversions, and I think all of those they were tied or ahead. I don't think there was a case where they were trying to play catch up here. The one that gets me most, even more than the 4th and 4 in field goal range, they had a 4th and 1 at their own 27, up by 10 points in the fourth quarter. Now it is your own 27. That's deep in your own end, but it's also only 4th and 1. And the thing you've done best all year is run the ball. The thing the Vikings have done worst all year is stop the run. It's a high risk situation, but I like their odds of going for it there. And again, it's not automatic. They had a field 4th and 1 earlier in this game. Jamal Williams got stuff. So I'm not saying that if they had gone for it, they would have converted. But what happened instead was they kicked a punt. It only went 39 yards and then had a 9-yard return. So they punted on 4th and 1, ended up with a 30-yard net punt. That's bad. And that was the point where they were 24-14. That was their lead. The Vikings take that short field, score a touchdown, and it starts the comeback. And I was in a haze after this game. Like, how did Detroit lose? I don't understand. And one of the reasons was it's not the fourth down conversions they didn't get. It's the ones they didn't go for it enough. 6 fourth down conversions was not enough. There's 2 more we're talking about here where they should have gone for it more. But even more to the point is what happened when he opted not to go for it on fourth down. His kickers failed him. We just talked about this bad punt that set the Vikings up with a good field position, and they had a pair of missed field goals as well. So a lot had to go wrong for Detroit to lose this game, and unfortunately for them, it did.
Yeah, and that 4th and 1 they didn't go for came with about 11 minutes left. I just pulled that up. And what's really interesting to me about this one is that against Minnesota last year, that's when they got their first win. They had a very similar situation where they were up, I believe, three or four. They were winning in their own territory around their own 30-ish. They went for it and didn't get it. But there was enough time. There wasn't a ton of time, but enough time to where Minnesota scored quickly. Detroit got the ball back, went down, and scored a touchdown to win the game. So not almost identical, but very similar situation. You've got the lead. This time they were up 10. It's not like a touchdown would even take the lead or anything. It would cut it to 3, obviously, but that is surprising to me just because he had a very similar decision last year and chose to go for it in that situation. So, yeah, a couple of those we would have liked to see them go for it. And like you said, go for it 6 times in an NFL game, and it's still not enough. It's not something you hear very often. But unfortunately, Detroit fell in this one late, or unfortunately for the Lions, that was actually my most likely upset this week. A handful of us picked that, and it almost happened, just fell short. But maybe next time for the Lions. And then one other one I want to talk about, and this is one that we talked about Pete Carroll a couple weeks ago, too. He's got a 4th and short field goal. They're tied at 20, 4th and 1 at the 6. Late in the third quarter, still a lot of time left in this game, but kicked the field goal to go up 3. What are your thoughts on this? I'm sure you saw this as a Seahawks fan. Probably were tuned into this one.
I did, and the weirdness of the whole thing didn't hit me until after the game. So we need to go back and play. And frankly, I should go back and watch this again to check exactly what happened. But I've seen this reported in different places as 4th and 1 and 4th and 2. There's an error somebody made in the scorebook. The point's the same. It's a 4th and short inside the Atlanta 10-yard line in a tie game in the third quarter. So 3rd down, they throw incomplete to DK Metcalf.
Sure.
That just brings up 4th down, but it stops the clock. The clock is stopped. So what they end up doing with a stopped clock in a tie game in the third quarter is calling timeout, then coming out of the timeout and kicking the field goal. This makes 0 sense because you've now lost a timeout. It was inside the 10-yard line anyway. If you're confused and the field goal is not ready, you can just take the delay of game. It's still a very, very short field goal. You should make that every time. Now you've saved a timeout in a tie game. That could be critical. Yep. So they're talking about this after the game, and this Seahawks answers make 0 sense. I'm going to read these quotes to you, and you tell me if you understand what any of these people are talking about.
Yep.
After the 3rd and 2, Geno Smith was asked about this after the game. Geno Smith said, "We were just kind of mixed up a little bit there, so it was probably best to take the points. We didn't want to just try and force it there, so we just took the timeout, kicked the field goal, and gave ourselves the lead." Okay? That's Geno Smith's answer. Pete Carroll was asked about it after the game and said, "I don't really want to talk about it too much. I don't want to tell everyone what I'm thinking. But we were going for it, and that was the mentality. And then we got a little screwed up and needed time to talk about it. I was hoping we would not be in 4th and whatever that was, 2.5 or whatever. I thought we were going to be in a better situation going for it. I was thinking about going for it possibly. Guys on the field weren't ready, so we had to call timeout." What?
Is that that's a Pete Carroll quote? That's not an Urban Meyer quote, right?
That is a Pete Carroll quote. "My offense wasn't ready. I wanted to go for it, but they weren't ready. So I called timeout, having time to get ready, and then kicked a field goal." What?
Yeah.
If Pete Carroll was your grandfather, you'd look at taking his car keys away.
Absolutely.
What is going on? That that process to me is so much worse than the actual decision. You were going to. What's happening? You were going to go for it.
Yeah.
But having a chance to get organized and have a better chance of going for it, you opted to kick it. I don't know. I don't understand. I can't help. I don't know what's going on.
That's one of those for Pete Carroll. For future reference, maybe always mess up the quote, but better to stay silent and be thought a fool than to open your mouth and remove all doubt. Might be a little extreme, but he would have been better off just saying, "I just wanted to go for the field goal there. I changed my mind." Instead of
all you gotta say is I wanted to take the sure lead. That's all you gotta say.
yeah,
I wanted to take the lead. This is good. Taking the lead is great. Being ahead is awesome. There's nothing wrong with taking the lead. But saying you were concerned, it was fourth and forever when, as he said, it's 4th and 2.5. The Chiefs went for a 4th and 11 with their punter throwing a pass. 4th and 2.5 is not 4th and forever. All right, I'm done.
Yeah, really tough decision there. Like you said, I hadn't seen the answer, so even tougher response. But he did also have a good one, so we'll give him some credit. It takes us into our best decisions, and this is one we don't see. Like you, this is what you pointed out in our first show. I think 4th and 2 at the Atlanta 41. They're down 7 with 4:39 left. I think this was the second quarter actually. He chooses to go for it in this situation. This is one where we see him a lot of times opt to punt the ball instead of a long field goal or even go for it. But he made the right decision in this situation, which was a little surprising to me.
Well, yeah, like I say, we just talked about one where he turned down a touchdown for a sure field goal. Usually, when he is aggressive, it's in the red zone area, the red area. Especially on this day, because especially in the first half, these offenses were rolling. Nobody was stopping much at anything, and it was big Cordero Patterson run, and Mariota honestly dropping bombs deep downfield, and Geno is the good Geno Smith games. He's precision. It's dink and dunk, but it works. Geno Smith here's Geno Smith in a nutshell. He's currently first in the NFL in completion percentage, next to last in yards per completion. So he's going to dump down and check down and dump off a lot, but when it works, he's finding the open guys and just needling passes into them, and frankly, it looks great when it works. Yeah. So again, it was 17-10. We're still not even halftime yet. These offenses were on a roll, and kicking a field goal to make it 17-13 was not going to help you win. They had to go to the touchdown. So this one, he kind of reacted to the game environment. We're going to need a lot of points to win, and he went for the points.
Yeah, so we would love to see that, especially from those guys that don't often operate that way. And the next guy I want to talk about, Frank Reich. We talked about him a minute ago when talking about that Colts-Chiefs game, so we won't spend too much time on it. But he had 3 4th downs where they went for it. Had a big one late on that final drive you were talking about, down 17-13. 4th and 1 at their own 33, only 6:40 left in the fourth quarter. So it's a 5.5% increase in win probability. The big thing here for me is who your opponent is. It's Patrick Mahomes. How many times have we seen a team punt in this situation and never touch the ball again? So that's the thinking, and he went for it. And as you said, they had a great drive that went down and won them the game there.
And I think you're probably right. If that's not Patrick Mahomes on the other sideline, if that's your standard run-of-the-mill average NFL quarterback, there's a good chance he punts and takes his chances. I mean, 6:39, obviously we just saw the Colts run an 8-minute drive, so you can kill that much time, but it's not a sure thing. And I'm not sure right off the top of my head how many timeouts Indianapolis had then, but it's not like the Chiefs were in a situation where they could have been comfortable running 3 times and punting. They punting there, you got a good chance to get a stop and get the ball back. Your defense has been frustrating Patrick Mahomes most of the day, by his standards especially. So that's not automatic go on the situation. And part of it was I think he knew his best chance to win was to score on that drive and not give Mahomes a sufficient chance to get the ball back, a sufficient time to answer back. And it was going to be, we're going to score on a long drive or we're going to lose this game. And those were he saw that as the only 2 options. And he opted to try and score on the long drive. And again, worked out for him.
Yep, that's exactly what they did. Scored, won the game. A team that didn't win the game but had a good call will be the last of our best decisions today is Lovie Smith out there in Houston against the Bears. I guess they were in Chicago, I believe, but from Houston. 4th and 1 at his own 46, down 20-17, about a little over halfway through the third quarter. This one's not far behind Frank Reich, so it was 4.6% increase in pre-snap win probability there, which is up in the top 10 for this week. So a really good call there from Lovie Smith. Choosing to go for it in his own territory is surprising to me too. In his that early or with that much time left in the game, I guess I should say, a little over or almost 6 minutes left in the third quarter.
So we're going to see a lot of weird decisions in Bears games, I think. Just brace for this. I wrote about this in quick reads. The Bears clearly do not trust Justin Fields or their ability to protect Justin Fields, or both. They got a run-pass ratio right now. It's only 3 games, so it's kind of a small sample size fluke, but their run-pass ratio is the likes of which we have not seen since the 1970s. They're running a prehistoric Jurassic Park kind of offense. When the rest of the league is passing, they can't pass enough. The league-wide run-pass ratio has never been lower. The Bears are going the other way hard. So it's going to lead to some strange, unusual situations like this. And if I'm Lovie Smith, and I got 4th and 1 on my own 46, 4th and 1 is a good chance to go for it. The worst case scenario, if I don't get it, Justin Fields has the ball. We'll just sack him anyway. Who cares? So I know it's not quite that simple. The Bears are running very well. They're running much better than the passing. That's clear. But when you're playing a team like this, you're going to make decisions you wouldn't make against any of the 31 other teams. And they're still, it's still a third quarter, and no matter how much they run, they're not going to kill 20 minutes off the clock.
Yeah.
You're going to get the ball back no matter what. And maybe because the Bears' offense stinks, you give them the offense a good field position. Maybe they kick that field goal that turns a 1-score lead into a 1-score lead. Great. So
very beneficial.
There was no downside here for Lovie Smith for going for this 4th down. And he went for it, and they still ended up losing the game because the Bears are weird, and Houston's not very good is the other thing. But it's in that situation we always say that the numbers we have are averages, and you kind of take that and as a baseline and then adjust them up and down for the specific opponent. And usually when we talk about that, if you got a 50% to go for it, and this is a bad defense, well, that bumps it up to a 55% chance or whatever. With the Bears, maybe like an 80% because they're so weird. You can't throw the charts out. They don't apply to a team as strange as these Chicago Bears.
Yeah, sitting at 2-1, not likely to last, but like you said, it's strange. Stranger things have happened, so we'll see there. I want to move on to some games that should be good games. Some of the biggest matchups this weekend. We usually preview one. We're going to kind of just get a few thoughts from you on each of these games. We don't need to spend too much time on all of them because there were a handful. I was looking at which one to choose, and it's like, damn, there's 3 of them. This first one here, Jacksonville, Philadelphia. Jacksonville, the surprise, one of the big surprises of the league so far. Philadelphia, potentially the best team in the league right now, looking just unstoppable for the most part. Got the Doug Pederson kind of connection there. What are you looking for in this one between Jacksonville and Philadelphia?
Well, there's a bunch of big games in the schedule here. I do want to call attention to one of them that's kind of up in the air at the moment. We're recording this Wednesday afternoon, but we're still planning on getting a Kansas City Chiefs Tampa Bay Buccaneers game, although the location is very much to be determined. And I just want to take a moment. I know by the time you listen to this, it's really, I'm talking to people in the future right now. I wish them the best, but a lot of people are in a lot of trouble in Florida. My dad is among those who have been evacuated from the Tampa area to Kissimmee. And I just want to hope, wish safety and health for everyone in the area and hope you got out of that okay.
Unfortunately, it's Hurricane Ian.
Yeah.
The name of this one, but not looking good down there. Yeah, 100% there when goes well.
But I'm going to pick as the most intriguing coaching matchup here. I'm going to go with Jacksonville and Philadelphia and just go with the new coach against his old team formula. We saw this in week 1, and at the time it looked like Pete Carroll's knowledge of Russell Wilson's game was the key to a victory. And given 2 more weeks of information, it may just be the Broncos offense is just not very good. But it's a convenient narrative. And so I'm not sure exactly how much Pederson knows about this Eagles. It's been 2 years since he was there. Jalen Hurts was only his starter for 4 games at the end of his tenure. There's been a lot of turnover on both sides of the ball. But again, it's a convenient narrative. He won a Super Bowl there, and the whole regime. It's going to be fascinating to look back on this, how a team went from the top to blowing it up to being a good team again, all so quickly. It's only been like 5 years. Right?
Yeah. Since the Super Bowl. Yeah, 5 years, 5-6 years.
Yeah. Crazy. So it's an intriguing match, but like you say, it's the best team in the NFC, the best quarterback in the NFC versus the guy who the most. I think everyone's surprised they're this good. I thought they'd be a good team. I did not think they'd be top 5 on both sides of the ball. But the most surprising team in the AFC, and maybe as as time goes on, maybe this will be the best AFC quarterback in the next 4 or 5 years. So a lot riding on that one. Considering it's a non-conference game, there's a lot of storylines going into that, and should be great football.
Yeah, and you mentioned the Kansas City-Tampa Bay game, which may end up being played in Minnesota, of all places. That's a good one. Quarterback-wise, you've got Mahomes and Brady. Brady maybe getting some receivers back. Mike Evans will be back. But Andy Reid, you got the new coach, Todd Bowles, there in Tampa. Buffalo-Baltimore is the other big one this week. Should be fun between Sean McDermott and John Harbaugh, two of the better coaches in the league right now with two of the better quarterbacks. Lamar is not the front runner for MVP right now, I don't think, when Mike looked up the odds the other day, but pretty close. He's up there in the talk. But the one that I like, maybe I'm biased, or I am biased a little bit, but I'm interested to see New England and Green Bay. We know Mac Jones. Well, they say they don't know if he'll be out yet. From everything I've heard, it doesn't sound like he's going to be back anytime soon. But how Bill Belichick kind of just how New England looks coming out with a backup quarterback. We know how great of a coach Bill Belichick is, going up scheming against Aaron Rodgers, trying to stop him. Hasn't had great success against New England in the past, I don't believe. I think just had the one win against Tom Brady before before last week. And so a couple of those came against New England. They don't play too often either. I do remember Green Bay giving up like a 70-yard or 60-yard kickoff return to an offensive lineman or someone who caught a short kick years ago.
That's right,
Hopefully
yes.
that doesn't happen again.
Was the one where he was desperately looking for someone to pitch the ball to, and there's no one there, so he just kept running?
Yeah, kept going and made it down to like the 5-yard line, 10-yard line.
But
yeah, seeing how he
had his breath.
probably had to sit out. Well, he had to go back out on the field, I think. So,
oh God!
Yeah, that was a little short. I probably didn't, but yeah, that one was fun. Don't expect that again. But seeing just how Belichick goes against Rodgers and Rodgers going against Belichick, I guess it's more of him versus the quarterback versus coach than coach versus coach. But LaFleur also back-to-back winner of our Coach of the Year award. So aggressive fourth down, but also has been a pretty good coach with a good quarterback, has the team ready to play more often than not. So really excited to see that one again, just partially biased, but I think there's some good storylines there too. And so that will do it for our Week 4 edition of the Coach Rankings Show. Don't forget to sign up for FO Plus at footballoutsiders.com/subscribe. You get access to premium stats, premium articles, fantasy rankings, our NFL picks, both against the spread and straight up. You get access to all of the premium stats on Monday, a day early than what you would normally get without an FO Plus subscription. Those come out for everyone else on Tuesday. You also get an ad-free experience on the website. So again, FO Plus is available at footballoutsiders.com/subscribe. Don't forget to join us on the Football Outsiders Discord for the Thursday night football game between Miami and Cincinnati. We're available on the Discord every Thursday night during all of the games on Sunday, and then on Monday night as well. And then I mentioned at the top that Underdog promo. You can get a free $100 at Underdog Fantasy using promo code OUTSIDERS. Thank you for watching, and join us again next week. Vince, I will see you next week.
A fun time as always, Ian. We'll talk to you in 7 days.